my name is Haley, and I chose to do my wisdom presentation on the wisdom of failure. So raise your hand if you failed at something in the last week, or the last month, or even the last year.
One.
So this topic is relevant because we've all failed at something, and failure is inevitable and it's unavoidable. We live in a culture that focuses on perfectionism. We often aren't taught how to fail, nor are we prepared to fail as we grow up. Think back to our childhood. We were taught to only color within the lines, that our practice would make perfect. We were often scolded for making mistakes. Failure was taught to be avoided at all costs. Nobody wanted that F on the top of their paper. So these messages shaped our fear of failure without us really knowing the severity of its impact. So the wisdom of failure comes from seeing failure as not the opposite of success, but as a stepping stone to success. So through my research, I found that the first step to seeing the wisdom in failure is to first redefine both failure and success. So currently, failure is defined as the omission of performance or occurrence, a state of inability to perform a normal function, fracturing under stress, a lack of success, and falling short. But through my research, what failure should mean is more of a short-term, often unexpected result that reflects challenge in progress. It's a stepping stone to success, an opportunity for learning and development, and an opportunity for creative change and innovation. Now for success. Success is currently defined as obsolete, a degree of measuring succeeding, a favorable or desired outcome. So what it should mean is a long-term sequence of life-improving results, an outcome from setbacks and failures, and a process of continual development, learning, and fulfillment. So through my research, I found a book titled Failing Forward, Turning Mistakes into Stepping Stones for Success, written by John C. Maxwell. And he brings up this concept of failing backwards versus failing forwards. So there's really distinct differences between the two. So failing backwards takes on the action of blaming others, repeating the same mistakes, expecting to never fail again, being limited by your past mistakes, thinking I am a failure, and then quitting. Whereas failing forward is the action of taking responsibility, learning from each mistake, knowing and acknowledging the fact that failure is a part of the progress, taking new risks, thinking something didn't work, and persevering. So in the book, he walks through 15 steps on how to move on and fail forward. I'm going to talk about 4 of them. So the first one is to realize the difference between average people and achieving people. So he talks about that the difference between average and achieving isn't the family background or individual wealth or even morality, but the difference between average people and achieving people is their perception and their response to failure. So as we've talked about in this class a few times, cliches are cliches because they're true. So life is 10% what happens to us and 90% our reaction or our response. So when we fail, it's even more important to make sure that we're controlling our reaction and our response so that we can move forward in a positive way instead of failing backwards and blaming and quitting. So the second step in how to fail forward is to learn a new definition of failure. So I talked about that one a little bit, but here it's really important to mention that failure is really unavoidable. We're all going to fail at some point in our lives. But it's also important to mention that both failure and success are not the final destination, but they're parts of the process. They're a path along our journey. The third step is to remove you from failure. So John C. Maxwell introduces the idea that personalizing failure leads us to feel permanently stuck in a hole. So he says to avoid personalizing this failure, to move towards a view of failure as a temporary isolated incident rather than a permanent condition or a chronic illness. So then the fourth step that he talks about is to take action and reduce fear. So often the fear of failure prohibits us from the act of trying and halts our forward progress. So most often we focus on the negative impacts of failing rather than the negative impacts of not trying at all. So this inaction and the avoidance of fear then traps us in a fear cycle that constitutes fear, inaction, inexperience, and inability. So to conquer fear and leave the cycle, we have to feel that fear and really move through it. President Theodore Roosevelt said, "He who makes no mistakes makes no progress." So in order to move past our fear of failure, we actually need to fail and to feel that failure and to move past that fear. So then we can see the wisdom of failure in a lot of wisdom texts. I picked 2 main ones, Buddhism and Taoism. So in Buddhism, I see it in the first noble truth, the fact of suffering. So this is therefore acknowledging the good and the bad in the world and that you can't have one without the other. So failure too, like suffering, is unavoidable and it's the fact of it. So it's a part of our lives that we can't run away from and we can't hide from. So as we learn to live with our suffering, we also need to learn how to live and work through failure's prevalence in our lives. And the second wisdom text is Taoism, specifically Tao 79, although it's seen in a lot of other ones as well. So Tao 79 says, failure is an opportunity. If you blame someone else, there is no end to the blame. Therefore, the master fulfills her own obligations and corrects her own mistakes. She does what she needs to do and demands nothing of others. So this here really embodied that idea of failing forward, because you're taking accountability, you're learning from your mistakes, and you're moving forward. You're using your failures to move yourself forward rather than just propel yourself backwards. So to end, Lao Tzu said, failure is the foundation of success and the means by which it is achieved. So success really isn't the absence of failure, nor is failure the absence of success. Some of our most highly regarded corporate leaders and great inventors experienced tremendous failures before becoming the successes that they are known for today. So therefore, we need to work to redefine our definitions of failure and success to not be final definitions, but to be equal parts of our life journey.